So, like Marisol mentioned, I was brother. And for me, I kind of built this one out. Actually, before I jump into it, who saw me speak at the last one? Okay, a handful of people. So you might hear themes that are similar, but I'll do it in a fresh way so it's fun. I want to jump back to farm life for me. Farm life for me was a big project of 6.5 years where I had this genius idea. So I learned about permaculture. Is anyone here? Looked at, studied, practiced permaculture, right? So it's essentially a system of thinking about your garden and your landscape in such a way that you set up a system, and then as time goes on, the system kind of tends to itself the way that it does in nature. So when we look at forests and these kinds of things, there's no gardeners out there, there's no one tending to these natural systems, they just exist in and of themselves. So permaculture is this beautiful blend of, well, how do I take those principles and apply them to a garden? Me and Marisol started doing this in my dad's backyard, which is a tiny little backyard. And then I had this genius idea, let me go buy 40 acres and do the exact same thing. Now, the thing that I didn't consider back at the farm was, how do you scale from a little garden onto a farm when you've never really done farming before and you've never done these things at scale? So it was 6.5 years. Here's a few photos. This is the first time I met Victoria. She got to meet my chickens. That was my dog Sage, me and my dad, one of the first chickens that ran away. And this was the belly of the farm. This place took everything from me. And I'm talking time, money, energy, everything that I had. It was all my devotion for 6.5 years. And it was a slow decline financially, but it was probably some of the most rewarding work that I've ever done, because this time on the land really cultivated me as much as I cultivated it. There was a really beautiful reciprocity that took place that only anyone who's ever worked in the garden knows. And so what happened was, when I went from Dad's backyard to the farm, I did the numbers, right? Sam was speaking about, like the way we run accounts and all this kind of stuff. I thought I was a genius. I looked at what's one of the highest priced veggies that I can grow and sell organically, and I'll just pay the property off in a few years, right? So I looked at garlic, and garlic back then was selling from $40 to $60 a kilo, organic. I did the math and I was like, easy. 5-6 years, I'm in the green. Property's paid off, and I've got my permaculture dream. I don't know if you've grown garlic before, but it takes 9 months before it's ready to come out of the earth. So for 9 months I'm in cash deficit and I've got a mortgage over my head. I didn't consider these pieces because, well, it was my first time owning a farm. So then I had the genius idea. I said, you know what, while I'm waiting for this garlic, what else can I do? Now the garlic, I planted out at, like I bootstrapped the whole thing, literally. Like, I'm still wearing my boots, as you can see. And I bootstrapped it, so I wasn't buying machinery, I didn't have tractors to work with. It was really me, family would come out and help from time to time, and that was about it. Sometimes friends came out. The pandemic was a big blessing because a lot of people needed a way to get into nature, and fortunately I had a farm where they could come help out. But I looked at it and I said, well look, I'm waiting for my garlic to come out. Why don't I go buy 1,000 chickens? So I got 2 of these, I used to call them gypsy caravans for the chickens, because they used to move around all the time, right? And so the idea was, the chickens are eating fresh pasture, I've got these mobile fences that move around, and I had 2 of them, 500 chickens a piece. And when you have animals, as a general rule, the bigger the animal, the bigger the problems, right? Like, having a problem with 1 chicken is easier to deal with than having a problem with 1 cow, for example. But the math doesn't really work that way when you're dealing in multiples of 1,000. What I learned really quickly was that I wasn't a morning person, and I became a morning person overnight. Because chickens are up before the sun is, and they go down after the last light touches the earth. And as the custodian, as the guardian, you have to be there before them and after them to lock them up and to let them out. Otherwise, you've got foxes around and you've got all kinds of issues. Now, you can't really see it here, unfortunately, because the caravan's cut off. but there was a little ventilation space that we left open for them so that they could breathe, air could circulate when it was hot. All the gas and all that would evaporate. And you can't see it, but from where this photo is taken, this was taken from the house, the chicken caravans were behind the branches of this tree. It was about a 500-meter stretch. Now, remember how I said chickens are the first thing up in the morning? That meant if I ever woke up and I could see light outside my window, that was a big problem, right? The first time that happened, it was like an instant cortisol shock. Because I went to bed the night before and I was broken from working. Like, broken in every way imaginable. My body had it. I didn't set my alarm. I literally hit the bed and passed out. Next moment I woke up, all I saw was light, like sunlight beaming through the window, which is usually a beautiful thing to wake up to. And my first thought was, oh God. As I made my way out and I looked from this exact same view, I saw a single file of chickens walking all the way up the property to where I kept the feed up here. They knew where I kept the food. This was like 600-700 chickens. The majority of them got out. And I was like, God, no. So I ran out, and fortunately they'd all kind of gathered up here where the food feed was, because they knew the barrels, they got into them over time. So I was able to bait the majority of them back. And I had to collect about 100 or 150 chickens, like a madman running around the property. Because it's the morning, they're active, they want to get their cardio in, they're up and about. So I get them all back, right? It's about midday. Sweet. I walk back up to the property, and I had this really old beat up Holden Rodeo that I used as like a mini tractor, if you will. It got to take care of the majority of the jobs that I had. The thing was with this Holden Rodeo, it had this crazy clanking sound because one of the cylinders had gone. So the whole neighborhood got to know that like Marco was out in the valley doing something, and the chickens got to know it as well. Kind of like the Russian scientist, his name escapes me, but with a dog and the bell. Pavlov, right. It's kind of like Pavlov's dog, but in my case it was chickens. And I wasn't using a bell, I was using my Holden Rodeo, which was missing a cylinder. So it sounded like someone hammering an anvil when I turned it on, right? And it would echo through the whole valley. I used to have, my neighbors were like, in their 80s, they were the previous owners. All I would see was them holding a cup of tea sometimes. They were cattle farmers. This photo was taken early in the property, so all they knew was cows and pasture land. And then I came with 1,000 chickens, I came with goats, I came with garlic and fruit trees. I was a madman. What had happened? I put all these chickens away, right? And I was like, cool, I'm good. It's about midday. I've got a few hours before I have to start collecting eggs. And I get to the top, and I realize one of the things you learn really quickly on a farm is where to leave your things. Because when you leave your things and you live in an apartment, it's easy to kind of look around, but when you're on 40 acres, and you go, where did I leave my phone? You learn very quickly, right? And so I put all my stuff down by the tractor, by the chicken caravan, sorry, to go chase my chickens. And I get up to the rodeo, and I'm like, I forgot my things. I'll jump into the car. And as I turn it on, and that clanking sound goes off, it triggers the chickens. And even though they're just being fed, what I see is a mountain of chickens piling up against the electric fence. The ones that are up the electric fence are getting zapped and twitching all kinds of mad twitches. And they just bowled the fence over, and they all ran straight back to me. Now the big issue was that they'd just eaten. There was no way of me baiting them back. So if I hadn't had enough cortisol in my system by then, this just took me way overboard. I spent the whole day collecting chickens. When my partner came home, she was like, how was your day? And I was like, well, as it turned out, I finished collecting the last chicken just as she pulled in at like 7 p.m. at night. And I remember that day, I almost started crying. And I had to stop and plant myself firm and look up at the sky and say, no chicken's gonna break me. had so many challenges, it's not going to be the chickens. No way. And what had happened was, why it took me so long, when they were no longer fed, now that they were curious to explore, and they just gotten out of the fence line. So they started to spread in a very random type pattern across my land and the neighbor's lands. And so that was my adventure there. And the thing was, I really, really loved all the time that I had there, but what had happened was, I kind of got to a point where I could see how I could work my way out of this hole that I dug myself in. Because for quite a while, I was pouring so much money, investment, resources into this project that it was kind of hard to see how I was going to claw myself out of it. And just when I could see the way out, what had happened was I realized my biggest fuck up. And my biggest fuck up was chasing the vision of what would be one day, rather than enjoying every single moment. And so while on the outside, all of this looked like a really pretty picture, and I had friends, family, cousins, all sorts that would come and visit customers, and they'd be like, this is such a beautiful dream. And it really was. Like, the land was beautiful, my partner at the time was lovely, but the issue was I felt lukewarm on the inside. And I'd spoken to one too many people in my life to know that you can get trapped in that lukewarm state almost for an entire lifetime. And ask yourself at the end of your life, what happened? So I was looking down the barrel of 30 and just decided to sell everything. So almost 7 years worth of dream building, investment, countless hours, nights, days, the whole works. I sold everything, packed my life down into a suitcase and booked a one-way ticket into Mexico. Oop. So, which ended up giving birth to one of my current businesses, Mara Organic, which I'll get to in a little bit, but this was tremendous. I ended up traveling through Peru, Mexico, that's Australia, but it was a really cool fire, so I went through there. Canada, something crazy happened where they thought I was a criminal. I'm not, but come along to the book launch and you can hear about that one. And then I got to see a UFO in the desert, or it may have been something else, I don't know. But what's unique about this picture is this was taken off a really old phone. So this wasn't like your latest iPhone 16 Pro or something like that. That's the fire there from the night that we had. This thing, whatever it was, hung around for about 45 minutes in a very slow kind of motion, and it lit up the whole night sky. The phone didn't capture it, but when I went outside to look at it, the whole sky was bright. It was something fascinating. I'll probably share more about that in my book launch too, if I must, if someone reminds me to. But what was really cool about all of this was I spent quite a bit of time with the Wirarika people, and this is one of the spiritual leaders. And when you go to spend time with them, you travel out to places where they're very remote. So from Mexico City, it's like a 25-hour drive to start getting into their territory. And typically there's some dangerous places you have to cross through, like cartel territory and stuff like that. Typically nothing bad happens, but they tell you don't do things that are going to attract attention. So don't bring credit cards, no fancy jewelry, dress simple, bring the cash that you need for the time that you're there, and that's it. I did that, and I had my return flight to fly back to the east coast of Mexico, but I ended up deciding to forfeit my flight because something happened at the airport where they wanted to confiscate something that was very precious and sacred to me. And I said, there's absolutely no way. Let me forfeit my flight with the equivalent of 30 Australian dollars in my pocket. And in an area that's about 10, 15 years behind technologically. So I couldn't pay with anything, with cards or PayPass or anything like that. I had the money in my pocket and that was it. And I didn't speak Spanish at the time, so I needed to figure out a way of how I could not be a bum on the street in the next 2 days because I only had 2 days worth of food. And I traveled with something that I wasn't fantastic with, but full cowboy hat, kind of like what you guys are wearing. And I said, you know what, this is my only option, let me figure this out. And so I pulled my hat out and played my flute, and I figured out that I could actually make it by day, just by playing my flute. And so I ended up traveling for 3 months during that time, and started a business, which is called Mara Organic, and sell some products that some of you may have tried. If anyone's curious to try it, just come see me. I've got some samples there. And it opened up a doorway for this. So for me, the reason I share this is because what I realized was I wanted to elevate every single day to be a beautiful experience. And my biggest fuck up was in not considering how I was spending my days at that farm and whether or not I was actually inspired to live it and making choices from a place of inspiration rather than a place of desperation, because I had debts accumulating and stress and all these things. And this journey was, I want to live every day alive. I want to be inspired, and I want to look back at it and say, thank you. And so through following those footsteps, I landed in a situation where I got paid to learn how to play the flute, because truthfully, I only knew 5 songs at the time when this started. I just played those 5 songs on repeat, and after a while, I realized, hey, I can just bust my way around. People are paying me anyway, I might as well learn some new songs. So I built out a repertoire, learned these songs, learned to speak Spanish, learned how to barter and negotiate in Spanish, got some recipes for these products, built out a business along the way, which my intention was never to build a business with it. I enjoyed this product so much that I wanted to create it for myself. And then people tried it, and it's eventually manifested into something. So this product and everything I do today is about elevating every single day and creating a beautiful experience about it and celebrating life. And so there's my little fuck up. Hope you guys enjoyed the story. There was another fuck up that I was going to share, but I guess I'll leave that for Soul Path, which is the name of my book launch. And I'll just leave you guys with an invite. If anyone's curious to come along and hang out and hear some other crazy, wild, funny, unique, humorous stories, it's going to be right here on October 26th. And thank you guys so much for listening to me. I'd love to see you there.
All right, let's get a couple of questions from Malcolm. Yeah, to that.
I was just saying, it's the first time I've seen the recorder come in handy for my unit at school.
That's true. That's where I built up my foundations as well. Not all at once, though.
Yeah. You project, wait.
Either or.
Yeah, go for it.
When you're in that situation of cancelling your flight and then having to survive, basically, how did you look at it as more of an opportunity than getting stuck in a place of fear or desperation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Right in that moment, like, the item in question was a candle. It was a sacred candle from the pilgrimage that we'd just been on. And you're supposed to take that home and put it like on an altar in your house or somewhere special. And I saw the hands of the police officer that he was like, no, you can't go with this. I looked at his hand, and in that moment, everything in me was saying, please don't do this. Like, don't make the decision to turn around. And for me, I just realized, you know what? Like, I could play into this game, or I could give myself an opportunity to continue living a life that I can't quite fully explain, but tends to show me the footsteps as I trust to walk forwards. So for me, it was just about that, creating that relationship with trust within myself and with life, and to know that in truth, if I'm walking according to what's most truthful for me right here, and what has my heartbeat, then I'm going to get challenged along the way, but I'm going to get supported as well. And so it just worked out for me that way. Like, I said, no, thank you, I'll take that candle. I turned around, I didn't know what I was going to do. And the thing that helped me was I'd spent a week on that pilgrimage, and I met a few people that lived within a 3-hour vicinity. They were like, hey, you're a great guy, if you ever come back, let us know. But they said that in passing, right? They were just like, not thinking I'm ever going to come back. They were like, who's this Australian, Serbian guy from God knows where? And I called them that night. I said, hey, remember how you said if I'm ever in town? Here I am. Have you got a spot for me? And they were very hospitable. Like, they helped me out. And thanks to having a roof over my head for the first few nights, it allowed me to just have enough peace to know I'm good for a night or two. What can I do moving forward? And then that was all I had. And I was by no means a master. I'm still not a master by any means, but It worked.
Beautiful. One more question. Yeah.
What was your breaking point at the farm? Like, why did you suddenly leave after the 7 years?
Good question. So, I'd say it was less of a breaking point and more of a divine intervention. I'd given everything of myself to make it work because I really wanted to, with the farm, with my relationship, with everything. But even though I was giving everything, I wasn't feeling the reciprocity from the way that life was manifesting for me. And to me, that was clear feedback that perhaps I wasn't on the right path. The truth is, I had never considered a life outside of that farm. So for me, it was always, how do I work it out with the farm? There was never a consideration of another life. And then I had literally a divine intervention where I was seated, I was looking out at the horizon, and I had like a message that came like thunder through the clouds that said, "You're done here." And I felt it in my heart, I knew it was true. I didn't know where to from there, because life beyond the farm didn't exist for me. And within 24 hours, I got a message from a friend that said, "Hey bro, I need someone who knows about growing food. I just bought a piece of place outside of Tulum in Mexico. Do you want to come hang out?" And that was my bridge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more round of applause, Mark, everyone.